Okay, and I am very pleased to be joined here this afternoon by Reverend Ed McDowell, who also serves on the City Council with the City of Columbia. And most importantly, for this particular occasion, he narrated the incredible text based on Dr. Martin Luther King's speeches in a musical composition that you're about to hear at the end of this video called New Morning for the World and subtitled Daybreak for Freedom. And that was a piece composed in 1982 by American composer Joseph Schwantner, featuring a narrator. And we performed this piece a little over 2 years ago in January of 2018 at the Coger Center. And the performance you're going to hear is an archival recording of that performance. And I'm just so glad that Reverend can join us for this particular conversation and talk about the piece, talk about the sort of the message, if you would, of Dr. King's speeches that are contained in this piece, and how timely this message is to our world and our country in particular today. So thank you, Reverend, again for joining us. And let's start with the and I know you mentioned to me another occasion that I think you spent almost like an year, about a year, several months preparing for this. How was it like to really internalize these words, the message of Dr. King, and I'm sure as all performers do, in this case, you narrating this, you probably put your own sense of own stamp, I guess, musically or spiritually to these words as well. So if you wouldn't mind sharing with me, like how was that whole experience of really living with these words and then performing it with, it's almost like a soundtrack, if you would, like with the orchestra playing. And what was that whole experience like for you?
Well, I must admit, and just a word of thanks to you guys for allowing me to do that 2 years ago. Of course, when I was asked to do that, there was some fear and trepidation in not only consenting to do that, but of course, not only reading those words, particularly the passages that related to Dr. King. At first, a very humbling experience, an experience that brought some sense of gratitude and, of course, faithfulness. These are words that sort of resonated with me for almost a year. And of course, I must admit to you, it didn't hit full force until a couple days before the performance itself. That's when I really got, I don't want to say afraid, but a little sort of backed off a little bit. Remember now, I've been a preacher now for 41 years. And of course, when I stand before a congregation on Sunday mornings, there is that sense of butterflies that sort of fills my internal. And I felt that way in January of 2018. The words were so poignant. The words were so heartfelt. The words were so, sort of gave the ability to move from passivity to action. And that's the resonating theme that I sort of felt within my own being. I felt like it was a place and a time. Martin's words are always resonant to everyone who hears those words, that mountaintop experience, those letters in the Birmingham jail, all of the occurrences resonates within us several things, I think. I think it resonates a real true sense of passion, a real true sense of being about our brother and our sister's business, and that business is to love folk where they are and not particularly where we want them to be. And thirdly, it gave us a real sense of doing something. And that's the thing, I think, that sort of pushed me and sort of gave me the energy and, of course, the passion to speak those words.
Yeah, thank you. You know, it's from my perspective as the conductor, and for the orchestra on stage, you know, this particular piece, it is technically challenging. It's very typical. It is very typical of Joe Schwantner's writing. He writes dramatic and virtuosic music for huge orchestras. No exception in this case. You have a huge array of percussion instruments that you're going to hear in this piece with a full brass. It's written for a huge orchestra, and it's rather complex, especially at the beginning when when the music evokes this sense of turmoil and conflict, and it is quite hard. So initially, as we started rehearsing this piece, I just remember it's hard. so it's just, you know, our minds are just, can we? And then you will hear, obviously this is, you know, we have one shot at this. This is a live recording from the concert, so not everything is perfect, but that's not, you know, that's not why we're sharing this performance with everybody this week. You know, it's for other reasons, of course. But we were, you know, we kind of got into it from technical aspects and making sure we're, you know, making sure we're doing justice to the notes that Schwantner wrote, and also to not cover up the words that are being spoken by you. And, you know, we started from those, and then as we got into the, like you said, really the dress rehearsal and especially the performance, it moved from, this is a great piece of music, but it is difficult to really come into life, the piece coming to life, and sort of, and really, especially with the words, with the text, really sort of transcending all of those challenges and really touching us on a human level on the stage, you know, as well. And so that was and so at the performance, I remember, and usually, you know, there are a million things that goes through every, you know, my head going, you know, during the performance, all the musicians as well, but. And that was still happening, but at the same time, I just remember being almost overwhelmed by this message, the call for unity, and the message of hope, and also really call to action, I think, in containing these words, that it just became such a special experience for us. And then, yeah.
The crescendos up and down, the crescendos in terms of it sort of fed into the emotions of what was next, the dawn of freedom. And as I understood that theme, as I understood the words of M.L. King, it was a crescendo of emotions. At first, very, very strong and very powerful. It carried you into a valley, and then it brought you back to the mountain.
Right.
And that's the music. And I think every instrument in its own way provided spectrums of freedom. And that's the thing that sort of aroused me. I guess the thing that I probably remember most 2 years ago was that in the African American church, there's something that says when the preacher really hits a chord, the church says amen. And I wanted to, at some point in time, sort of break away from the verbal piece and just simply shout out, amen. We're on target. But I think being on target sort of moves us and leads us into another area because it leads us to do something.
Right.
The music was, and look, I must admit, I rehearsed I rehearsed 2 times or 3 times. I don't quite remember that, but I did rehearse 2 or 3 times. And of course, later on that evening, right into the performance.
Right.
Let me say, it was challenging. It was so challenging that persons were on the edge of their seat, not only waiting for me to say something, but for this symphony to break away into a piece that sort of soothed the hearts and the minds of those who were in that auditorium that evening. I believe without a shadow of a doubt that freedom comes to us not only through the spoken word, as Martin gave to us many, many years ago and continues to feed us now, but that symphony, the violins spoke to the weeping that comes with suffering, spoke very eloquently to the drums reverberating in our souls. It spoke holistically to the trials and the tribulations that I heard and I felt. Gee whiz, during the symphony's onslaught of music, I broke out in a cold sweat. Not because I was nervous, but because I was anxious about what was next.
Right.
What was next?
Well, I was probably breaking out in cold sweat because I was anxious during those moments myself on stage, probably, maybe. But yeah. Well, thank you for those. Thank you so much for those words. But yeah, it's and this this time of quarantine, well, during this pandemic, because we cannot share what we are trained to do and what we love to do, which is to get together with other musicians and make music together and share it with people in the people in the community, people in the audience. That's one thing we cannot do right now. So as a result, I've been listening to a lot of our past performances to feature on our archive series and so on. And I don't usually do that. I'm one of those musicians. I usually really don't want to listen to our own performances. I know there are people on different sides of fence on that. It's just, you always notice the things that tend to notice things that didn't go right, right? You can be very critical of yourself. So, but by default, out of necessity, I've been listening to a lot of performances, and one thing that really made me realize is what a incredibly committed and talented group of musicians we're having South Carolina in Columbia to make up our orchestra, and definitely to be proud of that. But when I got to this piece, over the last, this past weekend, it was such a it actually kind of made me tear up, listening to Reverend McDowell's renditions of Dr. King's message and his words, with this very cinematic, as you said, Reverend, this at the end it's just a build and the build. It's a one continuous crescendo really, until the peaceful end. It became such a powerful experience, just listening to it again. But in light of what's been happening around the country, I thought we have to
Absolutely.
we have to share this. We have to share this with everybody, and hope that the beautiful thing about any piece of music, any art, but any musical composition as well, is that whoever's every person listening to it can take away different messages from the same performance, from the same piece of music, and that's really the beauty of music, beauty of the art. What I took away from this performance was that the renewal of sense of hope and sort of this quiet resolve and determination, and call to action was sort of what I took away just in that particular hearing. Those of you out there listening to this particular performance, you might the different aspects of the piece might resonate with different folks out there too, and that's totally fine. There's not a correct way to interpret any piece of music. There's not a wrong way. There are there's many correct ways to do it, to appreciate. There's not a wrong way usually.
Sure.
So that's sort of my personal experience with this, revisiting this performance. And Reverend, I don't know if are there certain aspects of this piece that you feel is particularly reverberant, maybe today?
Well,
in Colombia especially? Or?
sure. And I must say to you unequivocally that what we celebrated 2 years ago could very well be a presentation for the pandemic that we're in and the social upheaval that we are experiencing, not only in the nation, but of course in our city.
Right.
What I heard 2 years ago was hope unabashed. What I heard 2 years ago was possibilities, opportunities. What I heard 2 years ago was a celebratory nuance that sort of helped folk move beyond where they are and their differences to a state where we sense commonality. It's not, and of course, I'd be totally not honest with you if I were not to say this was an experience where Black and white and persons of all nationalities and colors came together. Not only did they come together to be entertained, but they came together somewhere in that program where they sensed hope. Hope is not dead. Hope is not dead, and it's contingent upon each of us to look deep down into the reservoirs of our faith and allow hope to sort of ooze up, and folk are able to sense real, hopeful possibilities. It's unfaithful. I mean, it bothers me to know, unfortunate, brother. It's unfortunate that some of the things that has happened these last few weeks, it's unfortunate that this pandemic is still a part of our culture and a part of who we are, having to set a new normal. But gee whiz, somewhere I've read truth crushed to the soil will rise again. Hopeless situations become situations of hope and hopeful possibilities. This is what you all did for me 2 years ago. This is what I would certainly, we need to do it again.
Absolutely. Yes.
We need to do it again. We
Yes.
need to put it on, we need to put it on somebody's, on your web page. We need to allow folk to sense not only the movement of rhythmic songs and music collaborating in a freedom kind of way, unabashed freedom,
Mm-hmm.
freedom to sense who we are and whose we are. It allows folk who are on the outside to hear from the inside and to come into that place where freedom is truly exhibited in a musical way and in a verbal way. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's going to be touched with that kind of sensitivity. But if we touch one,
Mm-hmm.
if we touch two, if we touch three, somebody's heart is changed. Look, you all did more for me that night than anything else. It blossomed after I got over my nervousness, and after I heard somebody in a subliminal way say amen. I was ready to go there.
Mm-hmm.
I was ready to go there. But it moved us. It moved us to a place and a time where we were able to reflect on our humanness, not whether you're black or white. It doesn't matter. What really matters is that what's able to look inside of someone and say, let's be human and not black or white, Asian, Hispanic, Latino. It doesn't matter. What really matters, as Martin says, this beloved community has to be a community that embraces everybody. Everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I don't want to go to preaching now, but of course, usually if I was in the church, I'd say, let the ushers come forward.
Right, exactly. Reverend McDowell, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on this one. And thank you also for all you do for our city and our community as well. And we are looking forward to the day, hopefully soon, where we can all gather together and
yes, sir.
share music again in person